From censored files to clear evidence, this is Redacted Realms.
The darkness wasn't empty. It was filled with a soft, sickly green glow that seemed to breathe with him. A damp, fungal scent clung to the back of his throat, the smell of wet earth, and something sweetly decaying. Every surface was alive with them. Pulsing, living lanterns that cast shifting shadows across the cavern walls. His stomach cramped with hunger that had long since passed pain and settled into a hollow, gnawing void. The first one felt like swallowing cold gelatin that moved against his tongue. A bitter, metallic taste that made his jaw ache. But survival has its own terrible logic, and in that suffocating dark, he learned to eat the light to keep his own from fading. With each swallow, the green glow seemed to seep into his veins, until his own skin began to emit that same faint, unholy light. And in the deepest part of the cavern, something watched. Something that had been waiting for a new source of illumination, and they altered him. His hand was smeared with strange, luminous residue that seemed to pulse with its own sickly light. His eyes, wide and unblinking, reflected that same unnatural glow windows to something profoundly changed. This is the story of Mike Carter. Mike Carter was a seasoned survivalist from Lexington, Kentucky, the kind of man who spent his weekends deliberately testing his limits against the wild. To his friends, he was the guy who'd vanish into the woods for days, emerging with stories of endurance and quiet triumph. Nature was his proving ground. A familiar challenge he met with steady hands and calm resolve. But this time, he would descend into the earth's embrace, and what returned would bear little resemblance to the man who went in. He was always a bit eccentric, but undeniably capable. In early October, he confided in his sister Sarah that he was embarking on a solo expedition into the unmapped depths of the Blackroot Caverns. A week, tops, he promised. Just a reset. Blackroot Caverns. Over 50 miles of mapped passages, with hundreds more untouched. He carried supplies for 10 days, a headlamp and batteries, rope, basic rations. The air was thick with the scent of wet stone and ancient rot. What he didn't plan for was the rockfall. A minor seismic tremor, barely felt on the surface, sealed the narrow passage he'd entered through. 70 feet of solid limestone now stood between him and the world. Mike was trapped. His headlamp beam was now the only sun he had, and its glow was fading fast. That first week was a grim lesson in survival. A cold, damp routine of measured breaths and rationed hope. The air grew thick with the scent of wet stone, and something faintly metallic, like old iron. Every sound was magnified. The scrape of his boot, the rustle of his jacket, a constant reminder of his confinement. Rationing dwindled to nothing. He scoured the walls with desperate marks, a grim tally of his fading hope. Then, the faintest trickle echoed from below. He found a subterranean stream, its cold, clear water a fleeting reprieve. Water was salt, but the air grew heavy with the scent of wet earth and his own souring fear. Food there was nothing, only the oppressive silence and the sticky, clinging damp of the stone. No fish, no insects, just rock, water, and a darkness so absolute it pressed upon him like a physical weight. The final flicker of his headlamp vanished, plunging the world into total, suffocating blackness. In the void, the air grew thick and cold, carrying the faint, metallic scent of wet stone and something else, ancient and stale. His breathing hitched, a sharp, ragged sound that echoed back at him from the unseen walls. On day 14, the light died, and Mike was truly alone with the deep. The true test began. The human mind isn't built for this kind of dark. He started hearing things, voices that were just the distant water. He felt only the cool, stagnant air against his skin, a stark contrast to the gnawing hunger that consumed him. His world had shrunk to the faint, shimmering green point of light floating in the impenetrable dark. Then another appeared, a silent twin in the void, casting an eerie, sickly glow on nothing. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like old iron. Then a cluster of greenish-blue pinpricks materialized across the ceiling of his tomb. The air thickened with the faint, sweet odor of decay as the realization struck him. Not stars, but glowworm larvae. A galaxy of living light had claimed his tomb as its own. Orfelia fultoni. Their sticky, bioluminescent threads dangled like a cruel mockery of the night sky Mike would never see again. The thought arrived on a day whose number he'd long forgotten. A cold, metallic scent of wet earth and ozone filled the air. His breath hitched, the only sound against the oppressive stillness. Hunger twisted in his gut like a caged beast. The glowworms were the only living things in this void. A damp, mineral scent hung in the stagnant air. He knew, intellectually, they were likely toxic, a poison of last resort. Every instinct screamed against it, but the animal need was overwhelming. His hands trembled as he reached upward. The silence was broken only by the scrape of his nails on stone and the pounding in his ears. But the animal in him didn't care. It wanted to live. A choked sob escaped him. The first was vile, a slimy bitterness that left a metallic burn coating his tongue. He waited for death's cold embrace, muscles tensed against the coming agony. It did not come, only the oppressive weight of the unknown, and the acrid taste of dread remained. The silence that followed was not peaceful, but thick, and watchful. In the abyss, a faint, warm tingle kindled in his gut. The oppressive darkness seemed to thin, its solidity wavering like smoke. The gnawing hunger that had defined him quieted to a dull, distant ache. A pact was sealed in that silent, formless place. He consumed the light, and it sustained him. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and decay. A low, persistent scratching echoed in the void, as if something unseen clawed at the edges of reality. This became his cycle, a grotesque, eternal rhythm in the crushing dark. His existence was no longer marked by sunrises, but by the slow regrowth of the glowworm colonies. He'd carefully harvest a patch, swallowing them whole, feeling that peculiar warmth spread through his veins. A faint scent of ozone and damp earth clung to him as the warmth settled deep in his bones. Then he noticed the first change. The chronic ache in his old knee injury had vanished without a trace. His night vision sharpened unnaturally in the faint ghostlight, but his thoughts slowed to a dreamlike crawl. The damp cave air carried the mineral scent of wet stone and the faint, sweet decay of ancient wood. He began conversing with the glowworms, utterly convinced their faint pulses were whispering replies. In a slurred mumble, he addressed the darkness. "They're not hungry. They're patient. They're waiting with me." The biggest change was the light. It wasn't just a glow. It was a subtle, bioluminescent pulse that seemed to breathe with him. The air in the room grew thick with the scent of ozone and damp earth, a tangible weight pressing in. It wasn't just on the walls anymore. One day, after a large meal, he cut his hand on a jagged rock, and the blood, it began to glow. A faint, persistent luminescence that clung to his skin, refusing to fade. The organisms weren't just colonizing his gut, they'd infiltrated his very bloodstream. He was becoming a host, his body merging with the cave's ancient ecosystem. The damp air carried the scent of iron and decay, a metallic tang that coated his tongue. Each shallow breath felt heavy, thick, with the cave's primordial presence settling within him. On the 200th day, the cave exploration team finally broke through the rockfall. A shaft of blinding white light pierced the absolute dark, and Mike screamed, shielding his eyes. The stale air, thick with the scent of ancient stone and damp earth, grew suddenly heavy. In that new chamber, their mapping mission ended. They found him, but they didn't find Mike Carter, the survivalist. Instead, their lights revealed a pale, emaciated creature curled in a nest of stone. Its skin shimmered with a sickly, phosphorescent sheen that seemed to absorb the light. The air carried the faint scent of ozone and damp stone as they stared, frozen. Sarah sat beside him, her expression etched with profound grief. Medically, he had recovered. The bizarre glowworm nutrients had sustained his body at a baseline level, but the man who returned was unrecognizable. His eyes now flinched from daylight, unable to bear its touch. Mike would stare for hours at a single LED on his monitor, calling it his son. Sudden noises made him flinch, yet he sat perfectly content in pitch-black closets. Sarah's voice crackled with emotion. He asks for jars to put fireflies in. He says they're lonely. He misses the quiet stars. In the dim light, his pupils appeared unnaturally dilated, holding a faint, reflective gleam. Doctors diagnosed severe psychosis, PTSD, and a unique protein toxicity from his diet, but their explanations fell short. Blood tests persistently revealed unknown organic compounds, foreign signatures science couldn't catalog. The air in the lab grew heavy with the sterile scent of ozone, and the faint, metallic whisper of something they could not name. In the absolute blackness of the room, his very skin now emits a faint, measurable glow, a ghostly afterimage of his terrible hunger. The camera pulls back from the hospital window, revealing Mike now sitting upright on the bed, motionless, his hollow gaze fixed on the bare wall. Mike Carter endured 200 days in that consuming darkness, surviving by devouring the only light he possessed. He did not simply survive. He made a pact with the abyss itself. The abyss sustained him, but it exacted a terrible price. It claimed not flesh, but his very perception of reality. Now he belongs to the dark, his mind a prisoner to the gentle, verdant glow. It was the luminescence that saved his life, and the same emerald light that forever stole it. The screen fades to black, leaving only a single synthesized glowworm light pulsing softly at its center. A metallic scent, like ozone after a storm, hangs in the air as the light's rhythm matches your own slowing heartbeat. The faint sound of something wet dripping echoes in the distance, breaking the oppressive stillness. So tell me, when you turn out the lights tonight and see that afterglow in your own eyes, what's really looking back?
If this file opened your eyes, subscribe and open the next case.